Now, the escape clause could be for anything, but generally the escape clause is for you to sell the home. And you can see there actually is quite a lot of them, because back in the day, you would not even have one because it was such a strong seller's market. But now you can basically see that there's 84 results, which is quite a lot. So if I zoom out here on just the map alone, you can see that this is spanning the entire greater Toronto area. You can see they're scattered all over the place. And this really just depends on the motivation of the seller and whether they need to sell and they're not getting offers. And they're ultimately going to be, okay, you know what? If this person likes my house, maybe we'll give them some time to sell their home so that they could buy our home. And that's effectively all it is. Selling your Toronto home right now feels risky. Too many listings, not enough buyers, and the fear of getting stuck with 2 mortgages is real. But there's actually a way to protect yourself. It's called an escape clause. And more buyers are using it right now to buy first, sell later without the added stress. So stick around, because if you're planning to move up in this market, knowing how to use this clause could save you from a very costly mistake. Hi, my name is Zen. If you enjoy my data-driven and number-crunching real estate updates, be sure to like and subscribe. So in this article, I pulled it out because it's very interesting, because unless you've been licensed in the real estate industry for close to, if not more than 10 years, you wouldn't know what an escape clause is, but they are coming back and they're trending now. And this is why the Toronto Star came out with this article where it says why escape clauses are popping up in Toronto area real estate deals right now. So I'm going to explain to you what an escape clause is, show you tactically how it's going to work, the pros and cons of it, and I'm also going to get into the legal needs of how this actually would work and how there's different game theories and tactics that you can use with this clause, because it's uncommon for most agents. So this article starts off by saying that right now, a lot of deals are under what we called an escape clause, according to a lot of websites. And all an escape clause is, if you want to understand it, because it's just a fancy term, is it's the condition that normally you would have, like a home inspection or financing condition, but this condition is specific for selling a home that you haven't sold yet. Because you want to understand the problem, a lot of people in Toronto have been accustomed to buying a property first, knowing that their home is going to sell in multiple offers in like a week or two. They sell afterwards, knowing that they can find the home that they want, because finding the home that they want is harder than selling. Now, we're on the flip side, because it's a buyer's market where selling the home is much harder than finding the home, because there's 30,000 plus active listings in the greater Toronto area right now. So the escape clause is just a condition for you as the buyer to basically say, hey, I will buy your property under these terms XYZ, plus this one more escape clause, or the condition to sell your own property, whether it be a condo or a house. And this escape clause in particular can give them the peace of mind that their home or condo doesn't sell in today's chillier market, and they can exit the deal should you need to. And if written correctly, you can back out of the deal given the amount of time. And because it's such a buyer's market right now, that there's a bigger willingness for sellers to accept these escape clause or condition of selling a property, because it's what's necessary to sell a home right now. And that's all absolutely correct. So I'm going to show you my backend, and this is where it's going to get a little bit more nerdy and technical, but hang with me here because there's some good stuff coming up. So this right here, what you're seeing in front of my screen, is the backend on the TREB side for the MLS. And I am effectively just using the filtration over here for just SCE, which stands for Sale of Condition with an Escape Clause. Now, the escape clause could be for anything, but generally the escape clause is for you to sell the home. And you can see there actually is quite a lot of them, because back in the day, you would not even have one because it was such a strong seller's market. But now you can basically see that there's 84 results, which is quite a lot. So if I zoom out here on just the map alone, you can see that this is spanning the entire greater Toronto area. You can see they're scattered all over the place. And this really just depends on the motivation of the seller and whether they need to sell and they're not getting offers. And they're ultimately going to be, okay, you know what? If this person likes my house, maybe we'll give them some time to sell their home so that they could buy our home. And that's effectively all it is. The challenge with this is that from the consumer side, if you're watching my videos, you don't have access to these tools. And let me show you why. It's very unfortunate. Hey, it's me interrupting myself. Ready to make a move? Just one free call, no hassle, but decades of experience to work for you. This right here is what we call the client-facing MLS data sheet. So if you bought a home before, it generally looks like this. And there's a client side, and that's what we call the broker side, because it contains brokerage remarks such as sellers' names, etc., that I cannot actually disclose to without getting yelled at by my board. But when you go and look at a property, this property is sold conditional with an escape clause, but it does not indicate that anywhere, and it just shows that it's been days on market for 51 days. So this is why I think it's a problem with our side, where it's very hard for consumers to actually find out what has been sold in an escape clause. But if I go into the brokerage side, you can see on top of seeing the days on market over here, it also shows the last status, which says it's sold conditional with an escape clause. So I know this property is sold with an escape clause, but unfortunately the consumer side does not. Now, the other thing I can see is that it tells me when the escape clause expires. And keep this in mind because I'm going to explain this later and it's very important. So this escape clause is going to end in August 20th. And basically, it's going to be almost a 3-month escape clause period, or a 3-month conditional period in which the buyer could back out. So you can see over here where it says the last update, they updated this in June 13th, so half a month ago, and they gave them until, call it mid-August. So effectively, it is almost 3 whole months to sell their property. And because of the buyer's market, current buyers who need to sell their home are able to do this. But it's not as rosy as this article says, where it says to sweeten things up for the seller, they're able to show the property during this period and typically get a better offer. And it's to sweeten the deal. And unfortunately and fortunately, the fact that this is true and it's correct, but in practicality, it's not how it's going to operate. And I'll explain to you why. Because if you understand buying a home with conditions right now, traditionally you would get like 5 days for home inspection, 5 days for financing. So assuming you have the property sold on July 3rd, you would have basically 1 business day, 2 business day, 3 business day, 4 business day, 5 business day. So depending on the timing on the language, you will have until the following week to do it. But in the instance of what I showed you over here, these guys got from June 13th all the way to August 20th for the conditional period. So effectively what this buyer got is basically instead of 5 business days or 1 week, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 full weeks or 50 business days. So that's 10 times longer than the normal conditional period that we've been accustomed to and call it a balanced market. And because it's such a strong buyer's market right now, sellers are willing to take this. Now, this article does indicate that the seller is still able to show the property and to basically try to solicit other offers, but it doesn't generally work that way because with most real estate agents, if we were to see a property that's sold conditional, the probability of us going to that property or recommending, unless the clients absolutely love it, is going to be low because why would we go see a property when there's 30,000 listings out there right now to choose from? Why do we have to choose the one that we cannot actually buy unless we go visit it and then find out what the other buyers have bought it for and try to beat them, effectively getting into a multiple offer situation? So it just practically and tactically doesn't make sense because most people, when they see even sold conditional, even without the E, they're like, well, I mean, it's the buyers to choose whether they want to buy it or not. Why are we going to bother seeing it? You don't really get that exposure the minute you get some kind of SC. And as much as we want to keep showing the property for our sellers on the listing side, people don't come along when there's an SC or SCE on the listing. And because there are different ways to approach the escape clause, you have to understand the language. And most people who aren't licensed for, like I said earlier, more than 10 years will probably not have come across this. Whereas I've come across a lot of this because I've been like a dinosaur in this industry and we've done a lot of this on the commercial side. And this is the actual language taken directly from TREB. So it's pre-printed, but I highlighted the components that generally are up for negotiation. It's very normal. So it says that the seller may continue to offer the property for sale, which is basically what this blue highlighted part in the article says. But like I said earlier, it's irrelevant because the minute it has an escape clause attached to the last status, people generally won't show it. So the fact that you're sweetening the deal, if I was representing the seller, I'm like, yeah, thanks, man, but that's normal, right? But the two things you have to understand that is in most escape clauses, if written correctly, or you use a TREB one, which is pretty decent, you have what we call a first right of refusal. So all that basically means is this highlighted part. The buyer shall have an expiration of time, usually 24 to 48 hours, given such notice to remove their condition. So the escape clause is a condition. So if for whatever reason, another buyer does come along and present an offer that can be accepted by the seller, they will send them an email, be like, hey, buyer number one, we got an offer that we're willing to accept and go forward with it. We're now officially giving you your 24 or 48 hours, whatever is agreed upon over here, to waive your escape clause or your condition of sale and go firm on it. Otherwise, we are going to make this offer null and void. It will give you back your deposit, and we're going to go with the other offer. So that is what a lot of people say to sweeten the deal if you can get that far. But it's the reality of if you can actually get to the point where you have another offer to compete with. And again, in this current market where there's 30 active listings, unlikely. Now I'm going to level up this some more. You can always play around with the way you negotiate because there are instances where we, representing the buyer, have provided the seller, hey, we're going to take a long conditional period. We understand that there's cost to you to carry the property. So what you can do sometimes, if you really want that certainty, is provide them with a non-refundable deposit, whatever that negotiated amount is. So it alleviates the seller from some more risk. And this is getting into some really high level negotiation where you're trying to gather intel to beat the other person. Not like, you shove the paper over and say, take it or leave it kind of style negotiation, but it's really trying to find a win-win situation on both sides with the amount of intel that you have. So we have had instances where we provide them a dollar amount of non-refundable deposit, which can be credited to the purchase of the home if the buyers go through with it. But if the buyers do not, then the seller keeps the deposit and then the buyer could move on because maybe they couldn't sell their home. So as you can see, because of the willingness to accept this escape clause or the condition of selling your own property, this is a very good opportunity for a lot of move-up buyers going from, say, a condo to a freehold, or from a freehold like semi-detached to like a larger detached home, because it makes a lot of sense to be able to tag this along because the sellers are more likely to accept this. And if you understand how this escape clause works, then you're going to also understand exactly why that 80% of listings are actually selling for below the list price. And this is exactly what I talk about in this video that's on the screen right here, where you can actually pick up deals because on top of being able to use escape clause, if the seller is motivated enough, you can actually get a severe discount relative to what the market value is. So make sure to check out the video that's on your screen. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya.